Hello and welcome again to the Weight Loss Freedom Summit. I'm your host, Lisa Tyholski, and today we're talking with Josh and Jeannie from East West Healing, and we're going to talk about thyroid today. And they're going to introduce themselves and tell us exactly how they got into thyroid health and what they're all about. So welcome to the Weight Loss Freedom Summit, and tell us a little bit about you.
Thank you.
Hi, Lisa. Thank you for having us.
You're welcome.
Our stories are a little bit different as far as how we got into it, but we have been working with the thyroid more specifically for the last 8 years? 8 years
More
or so?
than that, I'd say, because I would say all along, we've been in this industry like 15 years. It's been all along, partly consciously and partly unconsciously,
Right.
Not knowing it because we've studied this stuff, but putting it together and using it with clients in the degree that we are right now, probably about 9 years.
I think we get this question a lot, and I think what we always say is we didn't really choose it.
It shows us.
It chose us, it kind of found us. And I think for me, it's been a lifelong journey. I think I came out of the womb hypothyroid to some degree and have kind of been on a mission to understand myself and how to be healthier in my own body. And it wasn't until I moved away to the islands, a very warm climate, where I began to experience my body in a whole new way. And as I continued to study and understand the science and climate and cellular respiration and so on and so forth, it really began to make sense to me, how the whole body works kind of from the cellular point of view. That's kind of what's dominating or dictating or what's conducting all of the systems in the body. So it provided us an opportunity to step out of more of the symptom-driven focus and more into the health.
Yeah.
And allow us to kind of get out of our own ways. There's kind of an approach for each diagnosis or symptom that's out there, and I think people are getting lost in that. So again, it provided an opportunity for that to just kind of step out of the way, work with that more specifically, and realize that as you're doing that, your body's really trying to be healthy all the time. And if we just understand ourselves, we can create that environment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, I don't know kind of where it started. I feel like my evolution to where I am today started like in the first college that I went to, let's just say that. But I think working in the industry, I have my degree in occupational therapy, and I kind of left that after some time because I felt like all I was doing was helping people maintain their sickness and not get better. And I started personal training and et cetera, going through the process of really growing myself. And I started to do nutrition consulting with people, do YouTubes, and I was also teaching for the Czech Institute, and I started to see like a theme that everyone was taking supplements, everyone was doing labs, and no one was getting better. And the one thing that I noticed, or we noticed as we kind of met, was like no one was truly focusing on nutrition. And if they were, all they were doing was focusing on symptoms, dysfunction, and how the body shouldn't work. So me being a Y person, I've always loved anatomy and physiology and studied it. We kind of really, this thing chose us, as we said, really started to look at the body from a functional perspective. How does the body work, right? And not from a place of dysfunction. And by doing that, we've kind of, in a sense, it's like, there's a saying from the 1800s, if you give the body what it needs, nature will do the rest. And as Jeannie said, the body's always trying to find health. It's not trying to seek disease. Right. So with that, we studied science, we studied the physiology, and we learned what the body needs from a food perspective, what the body can break down. Just because a food's a food doesn't mean we should eat it. Right.
Right.
So, that's kind of how it happened for me, was just seeing what people were not doing and, starting working with people, and they would mail me seriously stacks of labs this big, and they'd want to do more labs. Binders. And I'd be like, why do you want to do more labs when you've done so many labs, spent money, you're not getting any results? And you can't treat a person through a lab. It just makes zero sense, And when we started to really create our philosophy and use it on ourselves and then work with clients, it really started to, the beauty of it started to show. And we really learned that if you really do give the body what it needs, you listen to the body and you meet it where it's at, then the body or, the systems will do the rest, which is create health. It takes a little bit longer, but it works, and we end that vicious cycle of taking supplements and spending money on supplements and doing labs and spending money on labs. And that was our goal, so that's, I have a long history, but that's kind of how I fell into it, was just seeing kind of the problem in the industry. It's still there too. The problem is still there.
It's actually getting worse.
It's actually getting worse.
I see a lot, or I hear a lot of women that, like after 40, they start having, they get diagnosed with a thyroid problem. And that seems to be quite often, actually, or pretty mainstream.
Yeah. Well, it tends to happen after babies. It's an accelerated process. And I think, again, aging and stress, the effects on the body parallel one another. So you have women that, again, in their childbearing ages, typically starting more in puberty. A lot of people tend to think that their diagnosis or the symptoms or whatnot just kind of came out of nowhere. But we know that disease is an accumulative process.
Usually stress is a catalyst, and stress is not a physical thing. A stressor is a physical thing, right? Stress is a physiological reaction in the body from the brain to the rest of the systems, right? To the endocrine glands, etc. Doesn't matter what it is, though. A stress is a stress is a stress, right? You could take the birth control pill, which is usually the beginnings of hypothyroidism. You could have a severe trauma in childhood or later in life. Doesn't matter. You could eat Pop-Tarts. You could not eat enough food and go in a caloric deficit. Whatever it is, there's a stress reaction that occurs in the system. And just to simplify it right now, that in itself will inhibit how our body stores energy, how it converts thyroid hormone, and how it produces energy. And those things are the catalyst. When you get it at 40, you didn't just get it, right? It's happening. But the funny thing is, no one's really tuning into it, right? And that's what we try to teach people in our philosophy through our subjective and objective, ways that we've assessed and teach people is you have to start tuning into your body so you can meet it where it's at from a lifestyle perspective and from a nutritional perspective, right?
Right.
Because if you get it at 40, you're already 20 years behind, right? It's going to take time. And there's been signs all along. You just haven't paid attention. And like Jeannie said, most people go into pregnancy already in a deficit. That's where they get toxemia, or they get preeclampsia. They got all these different issues, or even morning sickness. That is not supposed to happen, right? You're not supposed to get pregnant, and that comes along with pregnancy. That's a sign that something physiologically in your system is not working. And of course, we could explain the technicalities of that, which we have on our YouTubes, but for the purpose, different conversation. But for the purpose of this, it's what it, like Jeannie said, our philosophy is we use the term thyroid because it's tangible. Most people know what a thyroid is.
Well, and it's essential to, again, cellular respiration, which is again at the base of it all. How is your body producing energy? And thyroid and as well as glucose and oxygen are essential components of how we do that. So I think that's, again, why we talk so much about the thyroid and what are the issues that are creating suppression and interfering with that function. Right. But I think
most people go, well, what are you talking about? So the bottom line is this: you come into this world as a cell, you multiply, and if you think about it, all your tissues are a conglomeration of cells, and those cells are regulated by thyroid hormone. Every single cell, trillions of cells, right? So if we begin to regulate our blood sugar, which is one of the most largest stresses to our system, is not regulating your blood sugar. Mm-hmm. And we store glycogen in the liver, where you convert over 85% of thyroid hormone. There's a reason for that. So you can convert the thyroid hormone and use it at the cell level to produce energy. That puts you in a healing state. That puts all your systems in a healing state. It's the easiest way to affect every system in the body, right? So that's why we do what we do. But really, to answer your question, because we got kind of off on a tangent, women at 40, not because they're 40.
Number one.
It's not because they're 40. It's because of we always tell people, you're everything from conception till now. And you have to ask yourself, how did I get here? How did I get to have hypothyroidism at 40? And you have to start identifying with what's been going on in your life and what has led you to this point, right? Because a part of it is food. We always focus on food because we can control that. And that's what we do. So, of course, it's the easiest way to manipulate the system, but it goes deeper than that. Most people have thyroid issues from so many different various issues, like I mentioned in the beginning.
And it comes down to really understanding the story, as Josh was talking about. There's a doctor by the name of Gabor Mate who talks a lot about the biopsychosocial, and it's understanding developmentally the nervous system, because that really is what kind of influences the function of the physiology, how we are in relationship to the environment around us. So we're taking the steps to help people understand themselves better so that we can, again, as Josh mentioned, meet them where they are. Again, disease is an accumulative process, but so is healing. So we have to take the steps and the stages and work with the body where it is to get it back to that place of balance. Because you're not just going to take a supplement, eat a food, do a diet, and automatically you're going to get there. You have to understand how that process works in the system. So, otherwise, it's just creating another stress.
Right. For sure.
His biopsychosocial, it really means like the biology of the individual is inseparable from the psychological, social, and we put in nutritional aspects of their life. Yeah. Right? So you see your life in your biology and vice versa. So if we create harmony in the biology, we start to create harmony externally. It's that simple, right?
Right.
So that's what we really try to do with people, is to get them to see the biggest picture, but focus on food initially because it has the largest positive consequence on our system, and it's easiest thing for people to do.
Because you have to do it.
Because you have to do it to survive.
So why not learn how to do it in a way that supports you?
Yeah. Right. So is it just to throw the question out there and put you on the spot, kind of, if you're diagnosed with, and I've listened to some of your videos, so I know I'm not putting you on too much on the spot. Is it possible, once you've been diagnosed with low thyroid, low problems, is it possible to heal your thyroid eventually?
Well, let me rephrase that. And this is a bold statement. I'm not a doctor. I'll preface it with that. Mm-hmm. I can't diagnose. But in 15 years, I've had maybe 3 people truly diagnosed with a thyroid issue. And there's easy ways to really figure that out. Number one, most people aren't getting enough of a panel done to truly know if they're hypothyroid, right? People are getting TSH done. That's like saying, oh, the tire in my car is low, my car is dead. The air in the tire is, gone, and my car is dead. It's really not enough to even tell you anything. It's just telling you that the body needs more energy. So number one, people aren't getting enough of a thyroid panel done, right? They need TSH, T3, free T3, T4, free T3, reverse T3, TPO antibodies, cholesterol panel. Those are the things that you need to really understand what's going on. Number two, most people have what's called functional hypothyroidism. And we see it all the time, and I can prove it to anyone with body temperature and pulse and food. It's pretty simple. What it means is this, and there's 6 different kinds, but it's simple. They have an issue converting thyroid hormone. There's no issue with the thyroid. It's an issue with a conversion of thyroid hormone in the liver. And that usually happens because of increased cortisol, being they're hyperadrenic, or they don't have enough, they're hypoadrenic, or they have too much recirculating estrogen, they're not regulating their blood sugar, they're not storing energy. All these things inhibit thyroid hormone conversion.
And typically they all come hand in hand.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's usually an issue with thyroid hormone conversion, as well as we see, and we can see this in a lab, or we can see this with body temperature and pulse in their log. Usually it's mineral deficiencies that create the illusion of a thyroid problem, like a selenium deficiency, because thyroid hormone is also dependent on selenium. A lot of times, not iodine typically, a lot of people gravitate towards that, but that's rare. I would say those are the most common. So I find, I use this term loosely, that most people are incorrectly diagnosed. And what happens? They go in T4. right?
Yes.
Thyroid. That's probably the worst thing you could do, because that, if you don't need it, your body converts it into reverse T3, which inhibits, it basically binds to your receptor site. So it inhibits T3 in itself, which is basically what revs your engine. So you make the problem worse. And most people listening to this are probably going, oh my God, I felt better when I took it, and then I just felt horrible. I constantly have to regulate the values of my doctor. It's because you probably don't even need it. You're doing more of a problem taking it, you know.
Something we see quite often.
Number one,
I would imagine.
Yeah, no one ever needs just T4. It's probably, it's you don't, and no one ever needs just T4 by itself. If anything, they would need it with T3, but it's even that rare. So not that we tell our clients to go off their medication, but we work with them to create a foundation with food, regulate their physiology. We work with food frequency, all these different things to get the body to store glycogen again so that you can release it appropriately. Number one, it reduces the stress in their physiology. Number two, and it increases thyroid hormone. Number three. So yeah, we believe 100%, and we say it with
a lot of confidence,
100% confidence that if people put in the work, they can reverse their diagnosis that they don't have.
Yeah, I think that happens quite often, is that, you know, people go to the doctor and they say, well, I don't have any energy, right? And they say, well, let's do a blood test, and they say, oh, you don't have enough T4, let's put you on whatever, and then you start on medication. So I think that happens quite frequently, actually.
And what most people do have is adrenal hypofunction. So there's a big, their adrenals are burnt out, which again is going to affect the function of the thyroid, because they do work together, right. Which is why when you add the medication, it's like adding nitrous to the system, because the system's already broken down, right? It doesn't have the fuel, it doesn't have the resources to produce that energy. So
you're trying to rev an engine that doesn't have any fuel, and you keep putting in T4 and you burn the system out, because most people, it's funny, when most people say, I go to the doctor because I don't have any energy. Think about it. What is the one thing in your life that gives you energy? Not coffee, not caffeine pills, not Monster energy drinks, not Kill Cliff, none of that stuff. What gives you energy? Food. What do most people not eat or undereat is food. And most people don't even know what they're taking, and that's why we have people log to see values. But energy equals energy, and we have to do it consistently, because if we're not taking in energy, how can you expect to have energy? Right. And if you're stressed even more, you're burning energy even faster. So you need to regulate your blood sugar to downregulate that stress response in the system.
Right.
You go to the doctor, and it's like I could tell them what their lab's going to say. You go to the doctor, you don't have energy. Of course, we're going to see in the lab that you're not producing energy. It's that simple, right? You're not meeting your body with what it needs. Mm-hmm. And you're burning the candle at both ends, because you're trying to take care of your kids, you're trying to work, you're emotionally stressed, you're financially stressed. All these things have a really big effect on our system, and they waste energy, which is glucose, which Jeannie said affects the adrenal system, because adrenals regulate the availability of glucose. Right? And if you don't have glucose, then the thyroid can't burn the glucose, because it regulates the burning of the fuel. So those systems go hand in hand, and it's such a, in the industry, it's such a complex thing, but to us, it's very simple. It doesn't really have to be so complex, and people don't have to suffer.
Well, the industry's made it complex because we're trying to segmentalize the human body, and we have to get away from doing that. And we have to, it's really important that we take the time to understand, like Josh says, people think they're eating so much, and then there's this idea that, energy, to lose weight, you have to eat less, right?
I mean, that to some extent, that is true.
That is true. However,
but it doesn't make sense from a physiological standpoint.
And when you're in a metabolic deficit, it can compound the issue.
Yeah.
I lost my my thought. Sorry.
I
don't know where I was going.
Well, that's okay.
We'll come back to it as we move forward.
Yeah, exactly. So if I were to, what are my first symptoms, or how do I know if I have an adrenal fatigue problem?
Well, we don't really focus on symptoms or diagnosis.
Everyone's going to experience it differently.
Yeah.
You know, it could be lack of, or not able to sleep, insomnia, waking up in the middle of the night. It could be
PMS,
digestive issues, PMS, mood.
I mean, Google adrenal symptoms. There's probably 50. You can't really diagnose by a symptom when we don't do that, because that's how Western medicine diagnoses, right?
That's exactly
So
it.
we use our food logs and body temperature and pulse, because body temperature and pulse tells you what's going on at the cell level, if you're giving your body what it needs, if you're regulating your blood sugar, if you're producing thyroid hormone. It really gives us a baseline of what's going on in the engine of your body, right? In all the systems.
Right.
So we don't focus on one system, because the body is not one system. It's a system of systems.
That's right.
Right. So we don't diagnose, but we know by body temperature and pulse in their fluctuations throughout the day if someone has more of a leaning towards a thyroid issue or a blood sugar regulation issue with their adrenals. Yeah.
Yeah. And I agree with that. I think that Western medicine, you know, it gets diagnosed a certain thing, and then you get you know, shoved a pill or a medication and shoved on your way, and then nothing else is ever addressed as far as the entire body is concerned. And I think that's a really important point, actually.
It's an important point, but it is what it is. That's what medicine is. That's what
Right.
they're there for.
And definitely important if I break my arm or I'm in a car accident and need to go to the hospital, right? So they're definitely there for a good reason, you know, but certain things we can help our bodies with food and other things.
And I was going back to my point I was trying to make before. It's coming into that awareness of understanding what your body needs. Most people think they're eating enough.
Yeah.
We can tell you right now, they're not.
Yeah.
Because we have studied and looked over and assessed, hundreds and hundreds of logs, and seen that no, you're actually eating less than what you need to sit on a couch and do absolutely nothing. You know, and here they are thinking they're eating so much.
But they don't want to gain weight.
But they don't want to gain weight.
Right.
You know, I said, do you want to be healthy, or do you want to maintain your physique? Which you can have both. But again, it's a matter of stepping to the side a little bit and allowing somebody to guide you on how to do that. Because again, where you are in your health comes from habits and decision making.
Right.
You know what I mean? Those are at the base of it all. And a lot of the times, because the human body does adapt to its environment, the messages are very unclear. Not only that, but if the system's in chaos, you're certainly not receiving the proper messages. You know,
Right.
So again, we have to step outside or step to the side a little bit, get the information, understand what that means to us, and then begin to take those steps. And again, creating that awareness around what you're bringing in, when you're bringing in, the balance in it. It can get very specific, or particularly if somebody is really on that chronic side of things. You know, they've been on in this process for a long period of time. It's not going to happen overnight. You know, you're unwinding a lot of things. So you have to get more specific in how you're approaching it. And that it requires that awareness and seeing it for yourself and understanding it for yourself. Yeah.
Kind of going back to what you said about the medical industry, it's funny because clients will say to me, oh, I went to the doctor and he did a lab and they gave me a medication. They'll be like going to the gas station and say, I went to the gas station and they put gas in my car. You went to the doctor, you did a lab, you made the decision. What do you think they're going to recommend? Flowers and unicorn sprinkles?
Yeah.
You know? But the problem is that is the philosophy of Western medicine.
Yeah.
And people poo-poo it, but then they go to someone else and they do a lab and give you supplements. The philosophy is the same. It's not going to work any differently no matter what you take.
Right.
This for that approach. Yeah. That's why we teach people to use food. And even before that, like Jeannie said, the 5 things that we tell people are the foundation and the keys to healing with our philosophy, or really anything, is consistency. Number one, consistency in everything you're doing, creating awareness so you can really learn about your body, who you are, what's going on. Like if you can't feel it, you can't heal it, right?
Right.
Number 3 is, patience and really understanding that healing is not a destination, it's a journey. 4 is really believing and trusting in the process yourself that you can heal. That's a huge part of it. And the fifth is courage and having the vulnerability to step in the arena, get your ass kicked, and learn from getting your ass kicked. That's what healing is. Healing isn't, sprinkles and rainbows and unicorns. It's a process.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to do all those 5 things through the process. And if you do, you'll get the results. You'll come out on the other end and get the results. But those are really important, as Jeannie kind of touched upon. But, we use food, as I mentioned, because all that other stuff is this for that. You're just treating a symptom. Anyone can eliminate a symptom. It's simple. We're trying to fix people. We're trying to heal people, or I should say, give them the tools so they can fix or heal themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because what's more empowering than that?
Yeah.
Bring people back into their lives and living versus being on the internet all the time trying to figure out what's wrong with them. Instead, we want to show them what's right with them and provide them the resources to nurture that. I think that's the bigger goal. And in doing that, again, you're meeting your physiology where it is, and there's a lot to be said for that in the way that it reduces the stressors and allows you to, again, just thrive, really.
Yeah, because if you start looking, on the internet and you're trying to diagnose yourself and you're not, you could have, there could be a million things that you could look up, and you could have one of all of those things and think you're a total wreck, right? So that's not really where you want to start.
Not only that, but it's leading to this massive issue with micromanaging your health. So everyone's doing this and doing that to fix this and to fix that, and it is outrageous.
It's out of control. People all over the web, they're on Google University, diagnosing themselves. They do a lab for this, take this, and then they go back on and they do a lab for that, take this. And they're so focused on what everyone else is doing, right? Instead of really focusing on themselves. And how can you heal when you're not focusing on yourself, right?
Right.
And you're focusing on all these different diseases that bloggers talk about, or, I saw that this guy did a detox or a fast and it worked for him. And it worked for him. You're you, right? So, and we always tell people that's, you can't move further from self and heal. We're trying to get people closer to self so they can heal. And it can be scary because you kind of have to step outside your comfort zone. Your comfort zone, you can't stretch, you can't grow, you can't be challenged. We're asking you to step into that arena, step out of your comfort zone, stretch, grow, be challenged, have conflict, have questions, but that's an opportunity for growth, right?
And that's scary as hell.
Yeah. And it's scary to want to, to take the time to really sit back for a lot of people to really learn their bodies and the messaging and all the things that go along with that, right? Because it can be scary to think that, man, I really have to sit and listen to my body, or maybe I have to try new food. I don't really like new things.
Mm-hmm. The interesting thing is for women in particular, and I hear it so much from my clients, is that, I'm really struggling because I don't even know what my body's telling me. I don't know how to translate that. I can't feel anything, and that's I relate to that because I remember the first time I was asked what I need, and I had no way to answer that question. It kind of freaked me out a little bit, but I get that response a lot from women these days, that we don't know that. And that in itself is a scary thing. Like, whoa, here I am.
But that's the baseline, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And that's why we use our consulting and our consults and our body temperature and pulse and food log, so we can start to show them the patterns and they start to connect with it. Oh, that's why I was hungry, or that's why I couldn't sleep. So they're really learning how to connect with themselves and meet their body, on a different level. And that's what healing is all about, getting close to self and tuning into yourself, right? Yeah. And a lot can come up with that, but that's what life and the journey of life is all about. It's not about just sitting in a bubble, and I think when it comes to hypothyroidism or other issues that people complain of, they'll say, well, I want to fix this, but I want to lose weight. So everyone's gravitating towards weight loss. They're gravitating towards paleo. They're gravitating towards, the ketogenic diet. They're gravitating towards other silly diets just like that. And they don't work. Those diets, are not going to fix the system. And unfortunately, there's a lot of diet outs there, and that's what people gravitate towards. And it's not going to make you better.
Right.
It's cookie cutter. It's not for an individual, right? We don't give everyone the same diet.
It meets a need with reducing a stress on a system, but it doesn't help to restore the communication within the system. So you're missing that ginormous piece and just plugging in a little tiny part of it, you know? And that's why, again, over time, most people do fail on diets, you know, is because they're not exploring the other parts. They just think, oh, if I do this, it's going to solve all my problems. Well, no.
If I lose weight, I'll feel better.
Because you having that food, it's like a client said to me yesterday, she was asking me for her naturopath wanted to prescribe her ashwagandha, a lot of adrenal herbs. And I said, well, I don't think that you're ashwagandha deficient. I don't think that's what you need. I said, has it worked for you now? So far, she says, I've done 3 rounds of it and it's done nothing for me. I'm like, well, then there's your answer, whether or not you re-up, you know, and rebuy those things. So I think that made sense.
Yeah, I think you really have to cue into your body and what your body needs. And that's part of the reason why I did this summit, is because I think a lot of times we gravitate towards one thing or another thing, and we clamp onto something. This must be the answer. This must be the answer. Mm-hmm. And I have gone over several different kinds of diets on this summit, but you know, the problem is there's not one diet or one solution for everybody. And that's what you're kind of bringing to light here, is that, you know, this doesn't work for every one person. That doesn't work for every one person. And there's a lot of stuff out there. So to just pick up something, I think, and diagnose yourself can kind of be harmful. Yes?
Yes. And
yes
one of the things that we love so much about what we are doing is that no one really gives themselves a chance to understand what they're capable of on their own. So let's establish a foundation, which is then going to illuminate or make more clear what's actually going on in the system if the additional intervention needs to be made, right? But let's get that foundation settled. Let's strengthen that infrastructure and see what you're capable of first before you go spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars trying to figure out what's wrong with you. You know, because again, a lot of the times when you shift the attention away and really come back into what you came into this world as, again, that cell, how your cells are breathing, a lot of things will begin to eliminate. They'll start to work themselves out on their own. And very often they don't need any additional intervention.
You know, I think there's a lot of diets out there, and, you know, I agree that, like, so first of all, we're all human. We all need food, right?
That's right.
But if you look at functional physiology and how the body works, we all need the same foods, just in a different way. Different frequencies, different ratios, different grams, different calories throughout the day, right?
Right.
And I'll say this, and I know it usually gets a lot of, you know, poo-poo. It's okay, because we're all very opinionated. I don't agree, and I can explain it to a point over and over again that'll make sense, that no one needs the ketogenic diet unless they have epilepsy. No one needs the paleo diet. No one needs a low-carb diet.
Can we talk about that for a second? Why do people tend towards the paleo diet?
Well, they do, because they are so afraid of carbs. People are so afraid of carbs.
Why are they afraid of carbohydrates?
Because they don't want to gain weight.
But why would they gain weight?
Because they're eating the wrong type and they're going
because
so fast.
Because they're in a metabolic deficit and they can't metabolize carbohydrates. So they become very sensitive to them. Mm-hmm. So there's truth in all of it, you know what I mean? But it's looking at it in such a linear way.
Yeah.
That we're missing so many parts and pieces.
They go from 0 to 100, and your body's adaptable. You can treat your body to drink 1 glass of water a day, right? Or none. Right. So you can train your body to not need glucose. Your body's going to compensate, though, through a process called gluconeogenesis. It's a stress response. So your body's going to release excess cortisol to break down your tissues to turn it into energy. But that's catabolic. You're pushing your body to an energy-producing state into a fat-stored state, not a fat-burning state. And that's why people over time will lose weight, but then they gain weight. Yo-yo, right? So you can't just go from not eating carbs to eating a lot of carbs, and they go, well, I tried your diet. I gained a lot of weight. We're not about eating a lot of carbs. We're about eating the right types of carbs to fuel our system. right?
Mhm.
If you look at the ketogenic diet, the only way ketones can be present is if cortisol is present. So the stress response has to be present in order for ketones to be present. So you're basically living in the stress response. But of course, for epilepsy, they found that they can use the ketones for energy where they can't use glucose for energy. So it's a very therapeutic diet for them. So from our perspective, we're all human. We all need, of course, proteins and fats, the right kinds, but we all do need carbohydrates. We all need certain types that the body can break down. And we all need different amounts based on who we are, what we're doing, the healing phase that we're in, etc. So we have to meet the body where we're at. And I think so many people have been so brainwashed to being so afraid of sugar that it's literally created fatigued people, people with hair falling out, adrenal issues, hypothyroid people, etc.
It's an epidemic. I mean, more people are living in a functional hypothyroid state than, I mean, I think most people are.
Yeah, because they're so afraid of sugar. They're so afraid that, people eat 156 pounds of sugar a year. And, if you really look at the data, instead of just believing what's been told to you, over 85% of that is high fructose corn syrup. It's not sucrose. High fructose corn syrup is toxic, right?
Yeah, it is toxic, yes.
Right.
Correct.
Sugar is
Yeah.
not toxic. It comes from nature, right? It comes from, sucrose is in fruit. You're telling me that fruit is bad for you that comes from nature? No. It just comes down to how much I'm eating, what I'm eating, and if my body can actually break it down or breaks it down too fast. And that's why
So explain the difference. Explain the difference, because I think that gets kind of construed a little bit. So explain the difference between sugar, which would be unnatural sugars.
it's not unnatural, it's natural.
But when we're talking about cookies, cakes, pies.
But you're being very vague because everyone assumes that sucrose is in cookies and cakes. Usually it's high. Look at the ingredients of Coke.
It is high fruit. Yeah, it's high fructose.
Right. That's not sugar.
Right. Well, yeah, right.
That's not the term sugar as people use. That's not sucrose. Sucrose is a disaccharide. It's fructose and glucose.
Right.
That's cane sugar, right? That might be in some cakes and cookies, but 99% of the time it's not. It's trans fatty acids. It's tons of different chemicals and dyes.
Right.
It's high fructose corn syrup and dextrose and maltose. So those are sugars, but they're stressful sugars on the system. Yeah, 100%. Right. But if you think about it, let's say you eat 12 jelly beans. That's 40 grams of carbs. And people are eating a bag of that. Of course you're going to have an issue when you're going to gain weight and get diabetes.
Right.
Of course. Right? But if you had 40 grams, you had 12 of them, you wouldn't. You wouldn't. Right? I'm not advocating jelly beans. I'm just using an example here.
Right.
Excess of our society is excess.
Yeah. Everything.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
It's excess. So we have to look at number one, like cane sugar, sucrose is exactly the same sugar that's in fruit. Exactly. There's no difference.
Minus the micronutrients.
Minus the micronutrients. So of course, if we're advocating fruit because you're going to get the micronutrients. It's important. Same thing with roots. You're going to get the micronutrients.
Right.
But it comes down to how much, right? So if you eat a bag of jelly beans or a bag of cookies or 6 cookies, you're taking in probably your whole day of what you should take in carbs. So you're creating an influx in the system. You're creating hyperglycemia and hypoglycemia. You're creating weight gain and stress to the system, stress on the system, etc.
Hypothyroidism.
So we have to, number one, look at the type of sugar that's in it. No, I'm not advocating you eat. Well, it's okay to have cookies occasionally. We're okay with that, right? It's about balance.
It's about balance.
But
exactly.
I think people are and they're not, number one, they're so afraid of sugar. They're not eating the right types of sugar or carbs. And they don't understand that our body needs it to store in our liver for energy, to convert thyroid hormone for the central nervous system so we can produce babies, so we can think and breathe and move. I mean, without it, you literally cannot thrive.
We were talking about this the other day, and it's a catch-22 because everybody's so afraid of it, yet you need it to heal.
Yeah.
And that's where we're trying to really re-educate people on different types of sugars, and then how you're using them based on, like Josh says, all the different variables, particularly where you are in your healing phase.
Yeah.
And most people say, well, I've tried the fruits and the roots and I gain weight. It's because you're going too fast. People want results yesterday, and you have to log to see what you're taking in, because if you're taking in 50 grams and all of a sudden you're taking in 150 grams overnight, what's going to happen? You can't process all that. You're going to store the rest as fat.
Yeah.
So it's not the fruit's problem. It's your problem. It's what you're doing and not really tuning into what you're doing and meeting your body where it's at right now.
Yeah.
Quit blaming the sugar.
Yeah, and that's true. I think that a lot of us do that. I know I was over 325 pounds, and I know that until I really started listening to my body and started listening to and noticing how foods affected me as I was eating, right?
Mm-hmm.
And tuning into that's when I started to realize what affects me and what doesn't affect me.
Right.
So unless you really go into it, so it's a much deeper layer of what you need to do to heal yourself, because you can't just pick something and not tune into what your body is doing. You have to tune in. And that's where I think that's where a lot of things get lost in between, is that, we just pick something and then we go with it, and we think that we're only one-sided instead of a 360-degree person.
Right. And a lot of times I always say this to people: stop blaming food. It's always the body we're putting into. Stop blaming milk. Milk has nothing to do with it. Now we're talking clean sources. Right. It's the body you're putting it into. Your body is not producing enough lactase to break down lactose. Stop blaming sugar for weight gain. Stop blaming these things. It's the body we're putting it into. Because if it did cause weight gain, how come athletes that need 3,000 to 5,000 calories a day, that need 500 grams of carbs to perform, can't get enough in fruits and roots? They do use cookies and jelly beans and stuff like that to get the carbs that they need. Yeah. They don't gain weight. They're shredded. And I could show you hundreds of thousands of people like that. So it's not food. It's always the body we're putting it into. Now, I'm not advocating that. I'm just giving you an example that we have to really start taking responsibility for our health and understanding that it's our body and it's nothing else but our body. It's not the food. It's not the milk. It's not the gluten. We're not saying you have to eat it, but what I'm saying is take responsibility and understand that your body is not in a state to handle these things, right? It's not strong enough to break down dairy. It's not strong enough to handle all the sugar that you're putting in it, So it's all about responsibility. And I know it's hard for people, and it is a 180 of what people are taught, but I always tell people, well, how is what you're doing working for you? It's that simple. Yeah. If you're not eating sugar or the right types of carbs, and you can't, lose weight, or you have hypothyroidism, well, sometimes you just have to do the opposite.
I think that's definitely an important thing. Is I think we tend to look for the easiest directions, right?
It's the world we live in.
Yeah, because we're busy, we don't have time, so it's easy to latch on one thing or another. And I think that's where it comes down to really tuning in and working with someone to help you go that direction and to help you figure those things out, because you can't just pick up one thing or another.
Yeah.
Right?
You whatever you put into life, you're going to get out of it, right?
Right.
You can't just sit back and have someone give you a cookie cutter diet to follow. It's not individualized for you, and they did all the work for you. We make people work for it. We make people accountable, right? And
so they learn.
You have to. It's like, I'm not in AA or anything, but there's a saying in AA. I forget how does it go? If you work it, it works, or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, because like work it works, and that's what it's about. Like whatever you put into it in life, you're gonna get out of it. So that's what it's about. You can't just sit back and someone's gonna cook your meals, and you think you're gonna get results, long-term results, sustainable results. It doesn't work like that.
Oh, but I want somebody to cook my meals. Come on.
Yeah.
Hey, if you have the resources, great. Again, that's some people do.
But the average person that we work with, they don't.
Yes.
So for us, that's part of healing. Healing isn't just food.
And it's also understanding that it doesn't look a specific way.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's really about understanding what you need and then working within your life to make it work for you.
Right.
And there's no black and white, right or wrong, good or bad in it. And that's where there has to be flexibility. And there has to be flexibility and not be so rigid with yourself.
It's about creating your own journey.
Yeah. And I think that's definitely a good point, because I think that I know, with me, I had to create my own journey.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And learn, as I went along.
Yeah.
What my body needed.
Right.
Because that's the only way that you're ever going to conquer one thing or another.
And did it just go like this? Probably not. It went, it was all over.
It was kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
But, it definitely was all over the place. And it wasn't the first time.
Right.
It wasn't the first time. So, you kind of have to, it was a long lifetime journey, just like with you. It was a long lifetime journey to figure out what my body needed and how to heal it from what I was doing. Mm-hmm. Because, and so I think that that's a really good point, is that you have to really look at it's a long-term journey and not just a short sprint.
Right.
Of, I need to do this like right now. I mean, for most people, and so I think it's got to be something that you're committed to and something that you can do long-term. It's not something that you just do for a short period of time.
And to speak to that a little bit, it's also understanding that it's going to change, because you're going to change. You know what I mean? Right. So the more you understand yourself, making those simple modifications, you're going to be much more aware of how and when to do that. And that's a big deal, because we'll talk to people who we worked with and they've never, a year later, and they haven't changed anything. Yeah. And they want to know why something's happening here. Well, you haven't changed anything. And now what's going on in your life? Well, things have completely shifted, and you have to meet your body where it is. Yeah, constantly meeting your body where it is.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a great point, because you've got to be willing to change and where your body's going, right? Mm-hmm. It's not always, your body doesn't always stay the same. You don't always stay the same. Your cells don't always stay the same.
Life doesn't stay the same. Nothing
Yeah.
stays the same. Everything changes. So you have to move with it.
That's why we teach people our philosophy, because what they eat, how they eat shifts, the days they work out versus don't work out, on their cycle, off their cycle, stressful situation, not, seasons, etc. It's always going to change based on, it's like we said, meeting the body where it's at.
It's like we aren't sleeping these days because we have a little baby. Well, our diet's changed accordingly.
Yeah.
Because it does present a stressor, but what we know is how to meet that. And most people would just keep doing what they're doing and make it actually perpetuate it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. That's definitely, and I think that's a definitely a big point, because if you're 40 versus 60, your body's going to need different things depending on where you went in life, right? And what came before you and that kind of thing. Just like you said, when you were 20, you were, one thing versus something else. So I think that that's just a really good point to bring up, is that, you change over time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so that's like huge. So what are your, give me your best tips for people who are starting this journey and they really have no idea where to start, right? They've been in this state, or they had this issue, and they don't really know where to go with that. What could you help them with at that point?
Well, I think, like we said, one of the greatest stressors to the body is blood sugar, regulating the blood sugar. So I think going back to food frequency, that whole saying of eating small meals frequently throughout the day, I think can go a long way with helping somebody pull themselves out of stress and help their system begin to regulate a little bit more.
I think initially it's knowing where you're at and really coming to terms with hey, how I'm living and what I'm eating is actually not working for me. So when you wake up in bed, laying down, take your temperature and pulse. you know, if your temperature is below 97.8, because 97.8 to 98.6 is all within a norm. So if it's below 97.8 or 36.5 Celsius, you know, in your pulses, let's say in the 60s, 50s, 40s, etc., then you know you're not producing energy, you're not storing energy, you're not regulating your blood sugar, you're pushing yourself into a hypometabolic state. You know, we use that term.
And your body's compensating with adrenaline, cortisol, inflammatory hormones.
Yeah,
so
your adrenals are on overdrive, right? So it's a great way of saying, okay, wow, like this is data to show me that what I'm doing is not working.
Or if it is working.
Yeah.
You know, so that's why, again, we get to look with our clients in real time and begin to see what we're doing. Is it working or isn't it working? And we can make modifications accordingly, but not just crapshooting it. It's really, seeing it and working from that point of view.
I think the biggest thing, like Jeannie said, would be food frequency to start with. I mean, it's general because we're not working with anyone and it's so individualized, but probably food frequency because they begin to regulate their blood sugar, at least start the process. You know, they're taking a step in the right direction. You know, we could talk about food, but if someone's eating 1 meal a day or 2 meals a day, it doesn't matter. You know, because what we recommend for food is very different than what other people recommend.
Right. Well, I think that you guys brought up a lot of really good points. Definitely. I think that searching underneath and really connecting to your body is a huge thing for a lot of people, and I think that's something that people really need to take a look at and really dive a little deeper into their health. And I think that that's definitely a really important point.
And I think in approaching it in that way and talking to people about that can be a very scary thing. So again, that's where the nutrition comes in, is we get to explore it that way. And in the same time, we're resourcing the body. So as things come up, you're much more prepared to meet them in a healthier way and respond to them versus react to them. So I think that is, we don't really go into that depth, but we look at where we're at and start to support that, and it begins to just kind of move from there. Provides a lot of opportunity for deeper healing.
That's awesome. Well, tell everybody where they can find you and where they can find your gift that you're providing for them.
Often. So you can go.
So if you go to our website at eastwesthealing.com, there's going to be a pop-up that comes up. If you don't get it, just send us an email. And there's a 7-part audio series called The Restoration Thyroid, 5 proven ways to heal your adrenals and your metabolism with food. And it's a great audio series that we created. We only say that because we get so much feedback on it.
People are really...
and it's going to not only kind of take you through slowly about our approach, but give you little things that you can do for yourself to begin the process of healing. You know, it's not a one-on-one consulting program, but it's going to at least get you to kind of
start thinking about things,
understand where you're at and what you need to do to move forward in order to heal.
That's awesome. I am so happy to talk to you guys. And I think that that was wonderful information for the audience. And I think that your gift is awesome, because I think that's a really good start for a lot of people. So I thank you guys for being on with me, and
Lisa.
And I really enjoyed getting to know you guys and talking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.